Well, we just learned today that we're going to get to hear audio from inside the U.S. Supreme Court on the same days that the justices hear arguments in the two cases dealing with same-sex marriage. That's coming next week. Now, one of those cases is over California's same-sex marriage ban known as Prop 8. KCRA3's David Bienick has a preview of the arguments and the options.
Opponents of same-sex marriage today filed their final legal brief before next Tuesday's hearing at the U.S. Supreme Court about Proposition 8. They say the court should uphold California's ban on same-sex marriage because they say marriage between a man and a woman is, quote, timeless, universal, and special.
And then they'll also add that, there are still fewer than a dozen states that recognize same-sex marriage, and, well over 30 that don't.
Meanwhile, same-sex marriage supporters will rely on the Constitution's 14th Amendment, which says, quote, no state shall deny to any person the equal protection of the laws. It was originally meant to protect the rights of racial minorities.
But the Supreme Court has long since moved beyond race to protect against gender discrimination and other kinds of discrimination because they may be unfair in the same ways that racial equality is unfair.
Legal experts say Justices Alito, Scalia, Thomas, and perhaps Chief Justice Roberts are likely to vote against same-sex marriage, and that Justices Breyer, Ginsburg, Kagan, and Sotomayor are likely to support it. Justice Anthony Kennedy is seen as a key swing vote, and in a recent interview with KCRA3's Edie Lambert, he talked about deciding controversial cases like this.
We hope that by what we write, we can gain allegiance to our decision.
Among the court's options, it could make same-sex marriage a new national right, or it could leave the issue up to individual states, and so let Prop 8 and 3 dozen other same-sex marriage bans stand. Or it might decide that California is a special case, the only state to have legalized same-sex marriage, then voted it away, and issue a decision that would apply only here.
In fact, one legal expert I spoke with today said that California option seems like the most likely at this point. The justices may decide that the parties in this case simply didn't have the right, or what's called the standing, to bring this case before the court. In that case, a lower court ruling overturning Prop 8 would go into effect. After next Tuesday's oral argument, a decision will come sometime in June.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of interest, a lot of attention being turned toward this. And what about the decision to release that audio on the same day of the proceedings? That doesn't really happen.
Doesn't happen all that much. It first happened back in 2000 during the Bush v. Gore arguments, and it most recently happened during the health care arguments last year over whether to have this national health care system. So it doesn't usually happen. Usually we have to wait till the Friday afterward, but they said this is such a high-profile case, we're going to hear it about 2 hours after they finish the arguments.
And watch Prop 8 as it was voted in back in 2008, and now comes to next week, and I know you're going to have a lot more for us coming next week, too.
Coming up in Washington, D.C.
All right.
Exactly.
David, thanks so much for that.